Good morning everyone and welcome back to Bob's Bakery. I hope you've all been well since I saw you last. Today we're going to be baking another scrumptious dessert, a marbled loaf cake with a snowy white glaze. This little fellow might look a little plain on the outside, but when you slice in you reveal a gorgeous mix of chocolate and yellow cake. It makes for an excellent treat at a dinner party, or if you add frosting, a perfect birthday cake. Now, before we begin, we're going to want to prepare our pan. In this case, I'm going to be using a loaf pan. However, it's really up to you. This recipe will work equally as well in a bundt cake pan, a mini bundt cake pan, or any cake pan that you happen to have lying around. Now, the first step is going to be to prepare our pan. You're going to want to take either a stick of butter or canola oil, pan spray, something of that nature, because we need to grease the pan. Cakes have a very unfortunate habit of sticking when you bake them, and then when you try to remove them from the pan, they fall to pieces and it's not so pretty anymore. So, it's very important to always grease your pan beforehand. You can also add a little flour into the pan if you'd like. Adding flour to your greased pan will help the cake cling to the sides of the pan more effectively. This causes your cake to rise more evenly. However, the flour will leave a slight crust on the edges of your cake, and some people can find this displeasing. Alright, we're ready to begin with our cake batter. Go ahead and measure out a cup of butter. That's going to be 2 sticks of butter, or if you're using, cut that, begin again. Alright, now we're ready to start our cake batter. Go ahead and get yourself 1 cup of butter. That's most likely going to be 2 sticks, although if you want, you can also weigh it out. It's 8 ounces. Go ahead and place that into your mixing bowl. Now, take a handheld mixer, like I have here, add your whisk attachment, add your beater attachments, and go ahead and cream the butter until it has a light, fluffy texture. I'm going to show the process on screen below. Now, when your butter has achieved the right fluffy texture, you want it to look like whipped butter. When you have your butter creamed enough, you're going to go in, when you've creamed your butter to the right texture, go ahead and measure out 2 cups of granulated white sugar. You're going to add that slowly into the butter while mixing constantly. The goal here is to cream together your butter and your sugar. When you've creamed together your butter and sugar, go ahead and add in 4 large eggs. I've gone ahead and cracked them ahead of time. You'll want to use both the yolk and the white. Add them one at a time and continue beating during the process. After you've added all 4 of your eggs, you're ready to add the dry ingredients. Take a separate mixing bowl and then measure out 2 cups of cake flour. If you don't have cake flour to hand, you can substitute all-purpose flour by following this ratio. For every 1 cup of flour, remove 1 tablespoon of the flour and replace it with 1 tablespoon of cornstarch or arrowroot starch. This will help reduce the gluten content in your flour. Speaking of gluten content, let's talk about flour. There are 3 kinds of flour that you're likely to encounter in a grocery store. There's cake flour, all-purpose flour, and bread flour. Cake flour has the lowest protein count of any of these flours, and therefore it is less likely to form gluten during the mixing and baking process. This results in a softer crumb, a lighter cake, a better texture. Next is all-purpose flour. All-purpose flour has a mid-range protein content, and as a result, has mid-range gluten production. This makes it essentially suited to most baking applications, hence the name all-purpose flour. However, you will find that with things like cakes, all-purpose flour can result in a much denser crumb and a chewier cake. Lastly, there's bread flour. Bread flour has the highest protein count of any of the three flours, and as a result, it forms the most gluten. This makes it ideal for making bread, because the resulting product will be very chewy and very tough, just like you want bread to be. However, we don't want our cake to be chewy, so we tend to want to avoid bread flour if possible. The next step of the process is going to be to combine your dry ingredients. Take that 2 cups of flour you measured out earlier and add it into your mixing bowl. Then, measure out 1 teaspoon of baking powder and 3/4 teaspoon of granulated salt. I've gone ahead and measured it into this little dish. Add that into your separate mixing bowl and just stir gently until everything is combined. Alright, after we have combined our dry ingredients, it's time to add them to the wet ingredients. Get yourself a rubber spatula and then gently fold in the dry ingredients. You don't want to over-mix it because, again, that will lead to more gluten in your cake and a chewier, tougher crumb. And we don't want a cake that's chewy, do we? Alright. After you've combined your dry ingredients, fold them gently into the mixture using a rubber spatula or a spoon. You don't want to over-mix the batter because this will cause more gluten to form and in turn will make your cake chewier with a tougher crumb. After you've combined the dry ingredients and the wet ingredients, we're going to take our batter and we're going to separate out half of it into another mixing bowl. This is because you're going to add cocoa to half of your batter to make it chocolate cake batter for the final marbled cake. You're going to want to measure out 1/3 cup of cocoa powder. I've gone ahead and done that ahead of time. I put it in this nice little red dish. Add that to 1/2 of the cake batter, and again, gently fold the batter to combine it with the cocoa powder. Now you're ready for the fun part of this project, the artistic portion. Take your cake pan, and then add roughly a spoonful of your yellow cake batter. Now, take a spoonful of your chocolate cake batter and layer that over top of the yellow cake batter so that it is partially covered. Continue this process until you've filled the entire pan with cake batter. Now you're ready to mix. Using a wooden skewer, go ahead and gently stir your batter in a figure-8 motion. You don't need to do this a lot. The idea here is just to help mix the chocolate and yellow cake batters so that you'll get the best possible marbled effect. At this point, your cake is ready for the oven. You're going to want to make sure you've preheated the oven to 350 degrees. Place your cake in the center of the middle rack and then bake for roughly 40 to 50 minutes. It might take longer, it might take less. Make sure to check your cake after, I would say, 45 minutes. To do this, you're going to take a toothpick and insert it into the cake, then pull it back out. If the toothpick comes out clean, your cake is ready. If the toothpick comes out with batter on it, your cake still needs some more time to bake. If your cake needs more time to bake, usually you'll want to give it 5 minutes at a time, check, another 5 minutes, check, another 5 minutes, until the toothpick comes out clean. And a word of advice, make sure you check all over your cake. I can say from personal experience that I've had a cake I thought was done, and it turned out to be raw in places because I didn't check enough with the toothpick. Alright, I'll see y'all as soon as the cake is finished baking. Alright, now that your cake is in the oven, it's time to work on the glaze. Go ahead and measure out 2 1/2 cups of powdered sugar. You might also find this being sold under the name confectioner's sugar or icing sugar. Don't worry, all 3 of these products are the same and they will work perfectly fine interchangeably. Sift your powdered sugar into a mixing bowl. Now measure out about 5 tablespoons of milk. You might need a little more or you might need a little less. It really depends on how thick of a glaze you prefer. Using a whisk, combine the milk and the powdered sugar. Continue mixing and adding milk until your glaze is as thick or as thin as you would like it. Now it's time to decorate your cake. You can take a spoon and drizzle the glaze over top of your cake if you'd like, or you can just pour it directly from the bowl like I did. The goal here is just to get complete coverage. And you're done. There you have it. A lovely marbled cake with a snowy glaze. Serve this up at any dinner party and it's sure to be a success. Have a nice day. I hope you all enjoyed making this, and I hope you all join me for the next video. If you liked this video, please consider liking and subscribing. And if you followed along, I'd love it if you'd comment below telling me how the recipe turned out for you. Thank you all and have a great day.